Okay, so I'm back in business. Hey, listen up here. This is your package. ecs36b homework 3. And basically, let me try to go in there, homework 3. Okay, I also realized there is an issue. If you're using WSL, you probably have to use ++14. And also add that line for the include line as I specify in the homework specification. But I'm using Mac, so everything is fine. Using 17 is okay. That's the difference over here. Okay, so what I showed you earlier, if you take a look at this, look at the transaction, look at H person dot H. And inside the person dot H, I have this operator equal defined, just like your homework assignment number 2, but it was not virtual. So I request that in your program, you actually need to modify, become something looks like this. Homework, sorry. C3R. Let me compare to you what this two things should be different. Okay, these two lines are different. These two lines are different. This two line, this is what I gave you as inside the reference implementation. But that was actually from your homework 2. So for homework 3, you actually need to have this two function. One is operator equal, one is get ESID as specified in homework assignment number 3, and then both of them should be virtual. So I will compare the transaction as well. Well, transaction in homework 2 doesn't even have the fly. But if you come over here to see the transaction H, over here, I do have a fly that's actually provided. And I already provide this two, but I actually didn't make this virtual. So you should change this to virtual. Which is at the end. You can see the only difference between these two is this. Change that to a virtual and then provide the implementation for shadow object for that. Okay. Any question before I move on to the homework 3 reference implementation? What I want to do is make sure you can benefit, understand what is the reference implementation is doing for you and what is the mechanism I use to show you how you can make one function to work. If you know that, then ideally it's just incremental changes to make from one function to 4 functions. That's number 1 challenge you have to do. Number 2 challenge you have to do is make, because the reference implementation is just between one pair of client and the server. But the real implementation you will be submitted for homework 3 is going to be the client with 2 servers. By the way, homework 3 is different from homework 2. Homework 2, you develop your own client, you interact with the server. Homework 3, you are responsible for both client and the server. And you submit as a package. And then the TA will actually follow your README to compile and run your scenario. And then see how it works. And then give the grade based on that. Okay? So that's the main difference. Yeah. Yes, you have to implement the scenario, but I gave you a lot of hints about that scenario. the guideline of the scenario is that can you actually make a function call for this for function and such that it will involve multiple servers. It's not the reason we give a guideline about scenario. We don't want you to implement something which is only work between a pair of client and server, which we already did for the reference implementation. But you need to come up with a scenario. We give some guideline about how that scenario should look like. Okay. Any other question? All right, let me actually repeat very quickly about what is the reference implementation given to you. So this is your reference implementation. I already compile. If you do a window, let me run server first. This is going to be HW3 server. Okay, and this is going to be HW3 client. Okay, so basically getting the result, getting the, I think this one is get distance, getting those two distance from the server. I mean, just repeat what server has. What server has, you can see that this part of code is essentially your homework assignment number 2. Very similar. So I create a bunch of objects. I create flight. So the flight about GPS, Davis, whatever, this is actually a flight that's actually being running on the server side. And then I just call get distance. So remote from the client, let's see what the client code looks like. And what you can see the client is doing is just create the shadow flight, flight 3 and flight 2, which is corresponding to this 2 flight, flight 2 and flight 3. So the real object is running on the server. The shadow object is a proxy to access those 2 objects on the server. And what I did in the client side, I just say f3.getDistance. So I want to call that getDistance function, but that getDistance function is actually on the server side. So it will actually call the server, get the result printed, get the server result printed. Okay. So instead of for you to do homework assignment number 2, which is both the client server on the same program, now we split the program and let the client make the call to the server to really retrieve the real object. Okay. Any question about the reference implementation that you can actually get to this far by have some simple scenario with 2 servers and with only 1 single function instead of 4 functions we need to do. This only function we implement is get distance up to this point. Okay, any question? You have a question? You're good? Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to create a 3-server version. So remember, I have 2 objects, right? F2 and F3. So what I like to do is that from the client perspective, he thought both objects are actually on client server, but one of the objects is really in the other server. So in other words, what I'm saying is, this is what I'm going to do. So the reference implementation is a client out to server. That's what we're doing, right? You're getting your